If you've ever searched for Pikmin music on YouTube, you've probably found uploads that have the word complete in parentheses after the track title, or maybe the character names Olimar or Louie. And when you watch those uploads, you'll likely find timestamps indicating different sections of the track, only to find that each section is pretty similar, just with a few differences such as new instruments being added. This is because the music in Pikmin games is adaptive, /dynamic, /interactive, whatever you want to call it. So YouTube uploaders have to do some extra heavy lifting to include all of the aspects of each track. Interactive music is not unique to Pikmin, a lot of games have it, but I do think Pikmin, specifically Pikmin 2, has some of the coolest interactive music you can find. Pikmin 2's music uses real-time MIDI playback, rather than streamed audio, which helps the in-game music system be more malleable. They took advantage of this by including dynamic elements such as changing the rhythmic quantization of the current track, or having some notes get randomly removed while the track is playing. You can't really make real-time adjustments like that to streamed audio. If your WAV or MP3 file has straight eighth notes, you can't just make them swing eighth notes so easily. The audio is already set in stone once the file is created. Right? Wrong. Well, not wrong, but you're just not thinking big enough. If a WAV file is set in stone, as I said, then what if you just broke the music up into a lot of really small stones? Then you could set up a system to adjust the order of the stones on the fly. You could unmute some stones and mute others. You could do whatever you want. You just need a lot of stones and a system. So I did that. I wrote 2 pieces of music and exported them as multiple WAV files rather than just one each. It turned out to be a combined total of nearly 500 WAV files across both tracks, which might sound like a lot, because it is, but this was in the name of science. This was an experiment to see what it takes to have a similar level of control over my in-game music as WAV files rather than as MIDI data. The only other thing I needed, like I said, was a system. So I opted to use the audio middleware program Wwise since I was already comfortable with it and built my music system there. For the uninitiated, audio middleware programs like Wwise or Fmod are like canvases to set up all of the logic you want your game's music to follow, and then you just sort of bolt that middleware project onto the game engine such as Unity or Unreal and do your final hookups there. It's pretty cool. Some people like using these programs, others prefer just coding directly in the game engine. Either works. So, if you've ever wondered what it would be like to emulate aspects of Pikmin 2's music system with WAV files inside of Wwise, you're about to find out. Okay, last thing before we jump into Wwise. I want to go over which aspects of Pikmin 2's music system I included in this system. The first is the simplest, which is layering. Pikmin music often adds different instruments when the player is in specified game states, so I did that as well. For both tracks, I wrote a bass layer, which is always playing, and the melody layer, super important. And then there's 4 other layers that would mute or unmute themselves based on the player's actions. Enemy, for if an enemy is near you, combat, for if you're actively fighting an enemy, working, for if your Pikmin are in the middle of a task such as breaking down a wall, and treasure, for if there's treasure nearby. The next aspect I included is a swap of the entire track's rhythmic quantization. In Pikmin 2, if you're playing as Olimar, the eighth notes are straight. But if you swap to your second character, which is either Louie or the President, the eighth notes will start swinging instead. It's hilarious. It's probably my favorite music implementation choice in any game. Finally, I also included a state where notes from the melody layer are removed semi-randomly. Pikmin 2 does this when you're in a cave and you're running low on Pikmin to create a sense of unease. And this state works in both straight eighth notes and swing eighth note form as well. I also included some alternate A and B phrases for the melody in the first half of each track, but there's not a ton to talk about there, so I won't really touch on it. Okay, let's finally take a look at the project. Okay, here we are. This is Wwise. If you've never seen it before, then welcome. We have track 1 here and track 2 here. When we unfurl them, we see all of the different layers that I mentioned. I guess I called them states here, but yeah, we have the bass layer, the combat layer, the enemy layer, the melody layer, and the working layer. So to start, let's just listen to that and see what it sounds like. We have the Soundcaster here where we can test things. So I'll go ahead and play track 1. The melody will be on from the start, and then I will unmute or like raise the volume, I guess, of each layer as we go, and you'll sort of see what that sounds like. Because if that was the only thing that we had, we'd only need, like 5 wave files or something like that per track. So this is sort of the simplest part. So let's just start there and see what that sounds like. Okay, so that was just listening to the layers there. If this were to be in a Pikmin game, essentially, if you were near an enemy, that's when the volume would raise. If you were near a treasure, that's when that volume would raise, etc., etc. But we have a lot more other things that we need to do that are a lot more complicated. So if you see over here in the states section, I have P1, P1 low, P2, and P2 low. So let's ignore the lows for a second and just talk about P2. So if you remember, I mentioned that in Pikmin 2, when you swap to a different character, it will change the rhythmic quantization. So that's what this means, like P1 and P2. P2 would be like character 2. And in order to do that, with wave files, we have to have exported everything in swing quantization as well as in straight quantization, which I did. But I want that change to be as immediate as possible. It's not really possible to make it literally immediate, but I wanted it to be fast, so that's why every single aspect of this music is exported in 2 measure segments, like 2 bars of music per wave file. That way, I can have 2 measures of music that's straight and then 2 measures of music that's swung, and basically have it so that Wwise can swap between them at any time. So first I'm just going to play what that sounds like, and then I'll show what it looks like in all of the Wwise nonsense over here. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so as you saw, when I would click on P2, it would become swung. It wouldn't happen immediately, it would wait until the end of the 2-bar phrase, and then Wwise is swapping over to essentially an alternate playlist of music. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Let's go to the working state, for example. So as you can see, we have a playlist called Working, and then we also have a playlist called Working Swing. So when we go in there, we have all of these different segments, A, A2, AA1, AA2, incredible, perfect naming scheme. But essentially what is happening is I am telling it the order that the music is in, because obviously this is a composed piece of music with, a first measure, a second measure, etc. So I'm setting it up so that that's always true. So the way that I had it labeled is the first 2 measures is A1, the second 2 measures is AA1, the next 2 measures is B1, etc., etc. So working, which was the bass line that we had there, basically has unique music throughout that entire time. So this is like every 2 bars of bass line is a new segment here. And then we have the swing playlist that has all of the same notes again, but quantized differently, exported differently. So all of these are a different wave file than all of these ones, for example. So that already is quite a bit of stuff. That's just a lot of wave files. But the one thing about doing this in Wwise, like I've been doing, is that we have to make sure that when swapping from the straight playlist and the swing playlist, that it actually stays in the same part of music that we were at. So, for example, if I was in, measure 5, which would be B1 is what measure 5 would be, because each of these is 2 measures. So this is measure 1 and 2, measure 3 and 4, measure 5. If I was in measure 5/6, which is inside of here, and I, during that time, swap to character 2 and say it's going to swing, if I just left it like sort of the baseline switch container that we have here, it would swap to swing, but it would go back to the beginning and start at A1, which is not what we want. So I'm very scared to do this, but I'm tabbing over to the transitions tab in the working state switch container, because essentially what I had to do is tell it that if we're in A1 straight and I want to go, and the game tells it to go to working swing, I then have to, down here, make sure that it goes to AA1 swing. Because, if we're on A1 and we're going to swing, we don't want to start here, we want to start here, because we want the music to be continuous. So if we're on C swing and we're going back to non-swing, we have to make sure that we end up on CC so that the form of the music is not broken. So the transitions tab has, in this case, 25 transitions to make sure that anywhere that we are, C swing, AA1 swing, D, it always goes where it's meant to go. So there's a lot of logic happening in order to sort of accomplish this, which is pretty wild. So now let's go ahead and go back to that tester and just listen to it a little more, just to sort of get the feel of what the swing is like for all of these other layers. Because again, it wasn't just the bass line. The enemy stuff does that. The combat does that. All of them have this sort of transition matrix nonsense going on, because they're all exported in 2-bar segments. So it's 5 layers of multiple playlists of 2-bar wave files. These are the stones that I talked about, because all of these wave files, they are set. This is 2 bars of the bass line with straight 8th notes sitting here, but then because I made them all so small, we can swap them around quickly. So yeah, again, let's go ahead and just listen to that a little more, and then we'll talk about the next aspect. Okay, actually, before we talk about the next aspect, I actually wanted to play some of track 2 because I remembered that the rhythmic quantization I did for track 2 is actually different than the one I did in track 1. The setup is all the same, all that stuff is the same, but instead of doing swing eighth notes, I actually did a dotted eighth note and then a 16th as the quantization, which was more work on my end, so probably a bad idea, but it just kind of fit with the music I was already writing. So let's actually listen to track 2, just again to get used to what this sort of process is like, testing this stuff here in the Soundcaster. So again, when I click on P2, it won't make the change immediately, it will wait until the end of the 2-bar phrase that we're on. And again, I will also mute and unmute layers as we go. So yeah, here is track 2. Okay, now it's finally time to talk about those little P1 low and P2 low that you've probably been wondering about. So that is in reference to having a low amount of Pikmin. And if you remember earlier, I said that having a low amount of Pikmin in caves in Pikmin 2 will result in random notes being removed from the music as it's going. And I really wanted to find a way to do this in Wwise with streamed audio files, even though that seems impossible. And it kind of is impossible to do it actually randomly. My result is more semi-randomness than anything, but I still think it's pretty cool. So I did it in the melody, not anywhere else, because I think that's the one that makes the most sense. So let's go ahead and see how I did that. We'll do it in track 2 because I think it's a little bit more obvious. So we have 4 playlists in the melody, not 2 like in all the other ones. We have 4 playlists. We have the melody synco, which just means syncopated. So that's what it says instead of swing, since this one is track 2 is more of a syncopation dotted eighth note thing rather than swung. Then we have melody low Pikmin, and then melody low Pikmin syncopated. So these playlists are going to look pretty similar to the other ones that we looked at. We have this awesome indecipherable naming scheme, but essentially, A1, B1, BB1, etc. And they all have that, and they're all the same there. And then in the transitions, we just have way more than any of the other layers, like the enemy or the working. There's 169 transitions inside of the melody container for track 2, because since all of these are their own unique musical segment, and I want the transition to be possible between any of these 4, that means that I have to have a setup for if I'm in 2B2 in the normal melody playlist and I want to go to the synco playlist, I have to make sure that it goes to 2B2 synco and not to the beginning. And if I'm on 2C synco and I want to go to low Pikmin but not synco, I have to make sure that it goes to 2CC low. And that just results in that many things by chance. So that was fun to do. But let's actually talk about how I did the randomness aspect of the low Pikmin that we have. here. So let's see, how do I even find that? Oh, that's right. I have to open this, go here, and then music segment, and that will show me, yes. Okay, so the way that I went about finding randomness or semi-randomness in the melody is for the 2-bar melody segment that I would normally have, I exported even more variations of it and put them as a random subtrack on the segment itself, which basically means that every time this segment is called 2A1 low, as it is called here, every time it's called, it will pick one of these at random, 2A1A, 2A1B, 2A1 lowercase c. Again, naming scheme makes sense to me, so it worked, but it's ridiculous. So every time that this segment is called, it will pick one of these and play one of them, and then move on as instructed. So it will not play the other ones, and it won't play them all at the same time or anything like that. It will just play one of them. So what each of these segments are is the exact same melodic phrase, the exact same fragment of the melody with the whatever quantization is called for. So in this case, I'm straight, I'm not in synco. And then each of these variations is the same thing, but with one note from the melody removed. So this first one is the melody fragment, but with the first note removed. Then this one is the melody fragment with the second note removed. The first note is not removed in this one, so it's only one note at a time. So first note removed, second note removed, third note removed, etc. So what this results in is when Melody Low Pikmin is the playlist that is currently playing, every time it gets to one of these segments, because they all have this, it will pick one of these and play it. Meaning that's why I call it semi-random, because every 2 bars, one note will be removed. So it's not actually random. If in order for it to be random, I would have to allow it to, remove notes as often as it wants to some level of randomness. So there could be 2 notes in a row removed. There could be 3 notes in a row removed, but in this case, that's not possible. The only possibility for 2 notes in a row to be removed would be if, let's say we're on 2B1 low, and it picks the very last one where the last note is removed, and then when it moves on to 2BB1 low is actually where it would go. When it moves on to the next one, it picks the first one, so then the first note is removed. So that is a very low chance that you'll have 2 notes removed in a row, and even then it could only be those ones. It could be the last note of the phrase and the first note of the next phrase. So that plus plus just the fact that I did everything in 2-bar segments, that's how we resulted in nearly 500 wave files. And even then, this is a pretty solid level of malleability with the music, but I could have gone further. I could have made it all 1-bar segments. I could have, at one point I considered exporting every single note as a wave file, and then I decided that was too stupid even for me. Okay, so now let's finally actually hear what this sounds like. It might not be super clear to you at first because I've heard these melodies a million times, so I know what it'll sound like to have a melody note removed. I'm going to try to make it clear through how I manipulate it while it's playing, but basically just pay attention to the melody segment, and then whenever I'm swapping to a playlist that says low, you'll notice that a note gets removed and it sounds a little off, hopefully at least. And then I can also do that with the rhythmic quantization. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. To recap, there's 2 tracks of music that I wrote, and they each have a number of layers that you can essentially mute and unmute depending on what would be going on in the Pikmin game, theoretically, since this is something that happens in the Pikmin games. When you are near treasure, there'll be a treasure layer of music added, an instrument added, essentially. Same when you're fighting an enemy, when an enemy is near you, but you're not necessarily fighting it, and also when your Pikmin are working, such as, breaking down a wall or something like that. So that's the simplest aspect, but then I wanted to also include the rhythmic quantization swap that Pikmin 2 does when you swap characters, which is why we have these excessive playlists where there's, enemy and then the enemy swing version, which is basically 2 identical playlists where, we have all of the segments in a row to have the musical form available, and then we have the same thing, but I quantized it differently, so these are all unique audio files, and then in the switch container, we set up the transitions so that it'll always keep the form. So if we're on C, and we go to swing, we go to C, C, swing, etc. And then the final sort of wrench in all of this is that the melody can't have notes randomly removed when you're in the low Pikmin state, which is I accomplished again with this sort of random subtrack stuff that we just looked at a second ago, so I won't go over that again. And then there's also a version of that for the swing. So all of that combined is the reason why I exported everything in 2-bar audio files, so they're all very short audio files, and then of course I exported every instrument separately so that we can have that layering where we just mute and unmute, or change the volume rather, of each instrument. And then because I had to export all these different variations with the rhythmic quantization, or a variation where it's rhythmically quantized differently, but there's one melody note removed, all that stuff, that's why with these 2 music tracks, we have almost 500 audio files, which is pretty crazy. But ultimately, I had a lot of fun doing this. My sort of goal going into this was to find out what it would be like to try and emulate these aspects of what Pikmin 2 does with MIDI, but using WAV files. So I always knew I would be exporting a lot of them. I really had no way of guessing how many it would be, but ultimately, I think it's, a fun exercise. And, even though it was, a lot of work on its face, it was work that was rewarding and worth it. And I hope that you think this is cool at all. I hope anyone thinks it's half as cool as I think it is. So thank you for watching, and I'm just going to leave you with a few minutes of me playing the music again, and just changing anything. I'll unmute stuff, I'll change the state, I'll let both tracks loop like twice or something, and you can just, again, take in what all of those aspects are, and hopefully enjoy it. So, yeah, thanks. I have links in the description of the my places you can find me and things that I do. I don't know, I'm not really a YouTuber, but I made this, so there you go. I write music mainly. That's like kind of what I do. I play the saxophone. I don't know. Who cares? Anyway, see ya. Here's some music.